Yo, guys, welcome back in today. So today we're going to be talking about the Benin Empire and what has just happened. So if you guys don't know, the Benin Empire was ransacked by the British in the late 1800s, right? And so a lot of the artifacts, a lot of the king's heads, a lot of these different type of African arts, spiritual, non-spiritual, they were all taken to Europe. They were auctioned off. I think they were auctioned off in Great Britain, if I'm correct, right? And then they were spread throughout the whole world. They were spread throughout Europe and Germany. They came to the Americas. I think they were actually auctioned off in New York in the early 1920s or mid 1920s. And so the Rhode Island Museum, I think it's the Rhode Island of Art Museum, if I'm correct, but the Rhode Island Museum has actually returned 31 artifacts to Nigeria. So one of them is a king's head, right? Like a royal king's head. Of course, Nigeria is not the only place. There's been looting in Ethiopia. There's been looting in different African countries all around Africa. There's probably stuff in private collections around the world that we still don't even know exist, right? And so 31 artifacts have been returned to Nigeria. Now, these are not all the artifacts that are out here in the world. I think, if I'm correct, Germany, maybe last year in 2021, I could be wrong about this, but within the last year or so, Germany returned 500 artifacts to Nigeria. So it's really, really interesting to see that now these artifacts are getting returned back to where they came from. And I think in the Smithsonian in America, they had a delegation between the higher ups that are in the Smithsonian, and they came to a final vote to send these 31 artifacts back to Nigeria. Now, I don't know how many artifacts that there are left in the world that are not in Nigeria or not in Africa in general, but I thought you guys would like to know that. There's a lot of artifacts that are being returned. There's probably a lot more that need to be returned, and hopefully they do get returned. Hopefully people think in their right mind and understand how important it is to give back things that are not theirs, right? If somebody stole something from them, they would want it back too, and they probably would go through any lengths to get it back, especially if you were related to maybe a royal family or nobility, right? Doesn't mean that all people are good, doesn't mean that all people are bad, but people, they want things that are owed to them or cultural things that belong to them. So these different heads that they have different types of artifacts, they have different types of African masks, they have different type of African statues. So let's just think about how many different artifacts need to actually go back to the museum. I know that the Nigerian government, to some extent, and then the Nigerian, I think, National Museum, they were asking people, they were fighting for them. I think at one point they were even asking France for a long time to have a lot of the heads and a lot of other artifacts returned to them. It's so interesting because once you get these artifacts into private collectors, because they bought them, they feel like they own them and they don't want to give them back. And so it becomes this muddy waters where it's like, okay, at one point, maybe even these collectors are not even involved in the looting of these artifacts, but they bought them and they collect them and they feel like they deserve them and they pass them along to their kids, or they sold them, or whatever it might be, right? So it's just very, very interesting to see when things get returned, how they get returned, what the criteria is for returning, because you can ask until you're red and blue sometimes, and it just depends on who's the higher ups at that organization or corporation, even museums, and if they feel like you deserve it, and even if they feel like you can take care of it, which is an interesting dynamic if you look at it from both ways. Okay, cool. Maybe some people that are not involved, or maybe some people that work in these places, they just work there and there's protocols, right? And they have to come to a agreement before they can send things out. Understand that from a museum artistic standpoint. Can you take care of it? This is world culture. This is history. This is some of the wonderful history that tells about the human race and the human culture, right? Can get all that. If you're doing it in good faith and that's how you really thinking, I understand. But on the flip side, because we always got to play devil advocate, right? To make sure you can strategically understand things. On the flip side, you also should understand that the people you're returning it to are the people that actually created these. And a lot of these royal families, or people that weren't in the royal families, or whatever it might be in the society and kingdom, were actually already keeping these things up for generations and generations. So if they can keep them up back then I'm pretty sure they can keep them up now, right? Especially in Nigeria, because Nigeria, yes, maybe Nigeria is not the most richest country yet, But obviously Nigeria has some type of stability to where they can hold these things down. Obviously, some people have never been to Nigeria and Lagos. So it is what it is. But yo guys, I thought you would like to know that. Please like, subscribe, turn on the bell notification so you get all my videos. Add me on all social medias, which is African Network, which is Instagram, Twitter, SoundCloud, Snapchat, Facebook. Each one teach one. Always love each other. Always learn from each other. Yo guys, until next time, peace. One love.